Hey, it's VJ Franz K. I'm here in Horizon Worlds VR, and it's like an early Christmas present because I'm wearing my triangle glasses because we have new shapes, including these triangular prisms, which they have called wedges. But you can see behind me a whole bunch of other objects that have been added to the library. They're in the assets library, even though a lot of them are basically primitives, and they still only use up about as much capacity when you're building as those primitives. So I'm very glad for that. I've been looking for a triangular prism for a long time. But anyway, here they are. And I'll go out of view mode here and go back into edit mode, and we can take a look at these. All of these are new shapes. We have an icosahedron, and that is a 20-sided figure that was popularized in many people's minds with D&D. Here's the dodecahedron, also known as the 12-sided dice. There's a new ring, which is thinner than the other one that we have in primitives. We'll bring it out right here. See, this is the primitive ring. So in my building menu, I can look for these shapes, but to look for the new shapes, I should look in shapes in the asset library. And of course, Vidue and Oculos have already made a really detailed video about the capacity on this, so I'm not going to reiterate what they've said, but I'll give you my thoughts on how all of this is going. And the short answer is I'm very pleased with having these new sort of simple basic shapes added to the thing, because it's nice to have a complicated thing like a car ready when you want to add it. But at the same point, that car is not so good for creatively doing what you want. You can still customize it, obviously, but it's still, those shapes are going to be sort of locked into that. You're never going to be able to make something that doesn't look like a car out of that. You could try to make a sort of Transformer-style robot or something, but we have these stars at last, and before we would have to make a star out of various other shapes and just try to get it right. But here is a nice, perfect 5-pointed star, and you can see there's a 4, there's a 6, there's a 3-pointed star. Nice. These are going to be great for decorations or just all kind of building. So I could say they answered my wish, but I know that a lot of other people were also wishing the same wish, and it makes sense quite a bit because these are common shapes that are used as primitives in some 3D modeling programs. They pointed out in that video, you can see, actually his name is Lakes, not Vidue, but that Vidue tutorials. They were showing that this Platonic 01, which is a 4-sided figure, it's a tetrahedron, is actually lower in capacity than any of the primitives, even though you notice it still counts as a mesh, but it is lower in capacity than any of the primitives, so that's great. And yes, this is another figure I was hoping for, because sometimes you want to build with a pyramid, which is, of course, the pyramid has, it has 5 sides, because it's 4 sides, it's a square at the base, but then triangles on the sides. But here, triangles everywhere, so a true 4-sided figure. That's great. The new Taurus C, not to be confused with a car or a zodiac sign. Now, when I bring up this does show another thing that they were talking about, and I will want to talk about this too, is the fact that the bounding box looks, it's wrong, it's too big. It's too large. At least this one rotates. This one rotates smoothly along the rotation axis at the center, but you notice it's too wide on this one side, and then it's also too wide in another dimension on this side. So that could be better. And, later on I will describe something. I'll look at it now, actually. I'm just going into it. But I have a rotation script, the most simple rotation script on this, however they describe it. What is it called? But you notice that it's a half tube B, but it's not, this is the way you would want it to rotate in most cases, I would think, would be for it to rotate as if it was matching a full cube, rotate around the implied center of it. But as you can see, this is rotating around this center, which then produces this weird sort of boomerang-ish look to it, but it doesn't have the perfection of this. And of course, how I got this was I just grouped these objects together, so then the larger dimensions of the cylinder are being used to do the rotation. So, and that's the obvious workaround, is if you don't like the center of something, you should just group it into another group, and then make that the center of your larger thing to where you want it to be. But it would save even more capacity for us if we could just redefine the center of the object to be somewhere else if we want it to be. And one example of that is in Adobe After Effects, which I use when I'm doing my motion graphics. You can redefine the center point of an object, and that is so handy for making rotations, particularly of characters or things like that. You can rotate them at the elbow. So really liking these new shapes, and it's going to be so useful. Hole 01 is a cylinder basically taken out as negative space through a block. That's going to be great. And let's see, if I walk through this, can I walk through it? Does it? Yeah, it has the proper detection. I can't walk through this solid part, but I can walk through the hole. So that is a perfect simple entryway or something. And in the previous world, the way you would have had to do that is use a cylinder and then build up a whole bunch of squares, cubes, to sort of fill out that side. But yeah, that's going to be very handy. And still I'm hoping we'll eventually get Boolean objects, which would mean that you could define the object that was taken out of the other object. Like I could put a cylinder here and then say that. And I know that would take more capacity, but it's sort of like, as they bring up in those great capacity videos again, it's okay to have some shapes that are high capacity. For example, well, this car is going to be high capacity because there's all those details on it. It's okay to have a few shapes that are high capacity as long as you use them sparingly. You know when you're going to, when it's going to make a difference, and then you use it, but otherwise you don't use it. And you don't want a ton of them because each one is high capacity. So that looks great. Got all of these different parts. And yes, a tetrahedron there. A lot of these will be great. I like to build robots, as you may know. I've got the random robots of Zebulon comic or animation series I'm working on. But like a spike or something, or a stalagmite, stalactite, a mountain. There's all sorts of great things you'll be able to do with this. And yeah, because the angle is rounded, so it is yeah, it could be a more appropriate shape than just a straight cone. So good addition there. See what happens if I try to walk up this. I can up to a certain point, and then I can't. But, oh, interesting. You can see it doesn't come to a perfect point. It's got got a small rounded end there. But yeah, this, especially if you flatten it out a bit more, this could be interesting to sort of make a surreal territory, maybe even make your Mount Fuji or something. Like, to do Mount Fuji, we'll just famous beautiful mountain in Japan. Then scale it down. The snow cap is a prominent feature of that illustration. So just to make it, oops. Think like Bob Ross as you're painting mountains, right? But anyway, I don't know. Some other way of doing it to get that snow cap, but you get the idea. Looks like it's wearing a silly little hat there, but anyway, there we go. Fine for a background. It's like as long as you don't have a super amount of mountains out there, you're not wasting capacity. So these are great. We love them. Please keep making more shapes. And, you know, it would be kind of cool if they just popped up in the primitive area instead of being in the asset library, I would say. But I'm not going to complain about that too much. These are kind of a little bit unnecessary, but if you're a beginning builder and you haven't got your mind around how to make a thing, then just use this as a frame in the construction of a house. And of course, make it like this, make it more like an actual doorway or something. The arch, Platonic 2, of course. Why is this unnecessary? Well, it's just two pyramids. But still fun to have as one shape instead. Or you could always rotate your cube or something to be, you could rotate a cube on the other. Can you do that? But anyway, no, you can't. What am I saying? It's not a cube. Square. But, all right, we'll talk about a few other things while we're talking about shapes for just a minute. So some of the other assets, this doll, which has a creepy look, probably because she was introduced around Halloween to help people decorate their haunted mansions and stuff. So I was thinking, hey, that's cool. She is one of the first humanoid shapes that we have. But the problem is the way the assets are put together. Her body, her head, her hands, and her feet, all of those could be useful in making other models. I was thinking, hey, they've finally given us a humanoid head, which normally takes you a bunch of different shapes put together to try and approximate the way a human head would look. But then here, because these are all one mesh and they can't be separated. You can't separate this. We hope eventually you might even be able to edit the meshes within Horizon Worlds, but even if you had to go outside of the application to edit the meshes, besides just changing their size. And of course, this dress could be, you could change the size of the dress or something. You could have some other person wearing this besides a doll or this apron. These are all useful to have as separate things, but the way that they've grouped that, and unfortunately they do that a lot in the different assets. Now this, you notice, this is just a hexagon, and it's still a mesh. You know, I wonder, does that waste capacity? another thing we're talking about is the fact that, oh, wait, I see. It's not actually, oh, all right. It's a sort of a button shape. But also, why is that rotated in that weird way when it should be, you see what I'm saying? It should be aligned to its own bounding box in a better way than that. Here, her eyes there. So then look at the car, and it's great to put a car in your world. It's very easy to pick up the size of a car because everyone in our modern world knows the size of a car based or the size of a car compared to the size of them. So that will make them understand the size of everything in the world. But so these are the shapes that you can take apart, and you can take off the spoiler. Spoiler alert, you can take off the spoiler. Huh. But here, this is not very useful because all of these things are stuck together as one mesh. And I guess I can see that they do it to save capacity. So there aren't that many meshes that make it up. But wouldn't it be great to be able to have one tire instead of this entire thing? You're not going to be able to use that for very much. Definitely not these axles, not going to be very useful. And 2 license plates for the front and back. And we'll talk a little bit more about. So these are some of the shapes that I was repurposing when working on our entry for the Pop-M Jam, and we did a head cannon defense. So I was looking for a bunch of sort of futuristic shapes to build a sci-fi world out of. But look at this bell shape, which is a great shape. It's wonderful. And it was part of a sprayer or something, but I could use it as a trumpet. I could use it all kinds of things. But look at this terrible bounding box. It doesn't really make sense at all how it is arranged in this box. Yeah, right. It's not even at a diagonal. It's, you know what I mean? So, and of course, just as we said earlier, you can put it in a larger group to then reset where its rotation point and bounding box appears to be, which is what I did in a few cases. But yeah, that's. Now, of course, they did not make all of these assets just to be taken apart, but just like with a Lego or other building set, after you use the pieces for their intended purpose, you might say, well, I want to use them for my own purpose. This is a shape I really like. I would love to have more just simple curves to build my art with. And I don't even remember what this was originally part of, but that was a very nice sort of narrow curve that I used in building an art world. And this thing, yeah, don't remember what it is part of, probably a tool or something. But yeah, look at that box, just so awkward. Or this wrench, that wrench, it should be, the box should be like this. And it's this crazy diagonal alignment here. This is basically right, even though it's not a symmetrical shape. I think this was actually a broom to begin with, but also a sort of rounded shape here. Don't remember what this was part of. Ended up using it for the head of a robot rabbit, as you might remember. But also weird alignment that should be like straight up and down. Could also be someone wearing a shirt, right? This seems right. Interesting shape. I forget what it was part of, but used it as a few things. Here's another good one. This is how it should be, nice and aligned to its apparent logical order. Not a soft cube, but another rounded cube, rounded from one side and not the others. Useful. Part of a sprayer or something, but then I used it as part of a laser gun or some. Oh yeah, but look at that weird alignment. Not how you would hope it to be. Anyway, hopefully they will consider our sort of reuse opportunities. Here I had sort of gathered a bunch of parts from the UFO models and airplanes to use in different ways, but putting them together by shape instead of. Anyway, I went very far afield when describing the shapes, but I just wanted to have a detailed shape discussion here. Comment a little bit more on these just before I end this video. Please subscribe. I'll be talking a lot more about Horizon Worlds and show you some of my worlds. The half-rounded cone. When I see this, of course, I think of a shoulder pad or something for armor. Metallic. Look at that. Shiny. Ready to go for robotic figure of some kind. And then yeah, I keep forgetting asset library shapes. If I was building a robot out of this, what of these new shapes am I going to use? Of course, I can use the older shapes too, but it's fun to give yourself a challenge to just use certain shapes to build something instead of all of them. So, is this a robot donut? Robot donut man. So he has these. To get alignment of this, I could perfectly put that there. Then get the center point of that. Then go down there. I've been building for about a year, so at last getting my mind around how to really do it. Yes, the wedge, which I would call triangular prism. But whatever you call it, it's good. It's good to have this. Because for the longest time, when I wanted a triangular prism, I would be using a pyramid. But of course, a flattened out pyramid is not quite a triangle. It is still a pyramid. The robot. The donut robot. Donut and robot do not quite rhyme, but you could almost. So actually, maybe dodecahedrons are his Now, how should the dodecahedron be aligned in its own matrix? That seems about right, as long as you have one or two flat sides along those points. These are his shoulder joints, or the arm rotators. This could be an arm grabber. Primary colors like the classic robots from anime are toys. It's got a grabber there and the blue donut. Anyway, you can see where this is going, but all kinds of wonderful possibilities with these new shapes. So we are glad that they are here. And there is the user voice forum, which you can, it's interesting, interlocking situation there. The user voice forum, which is, it's another website that you can log into. It's basically a message board, and people have posted the things they would wish for in Horizon Worlds, and you can comment, you can vote them up, and voting them up is an important thing, because obviously they would pay more attention. The programmers and developers of Horizon Worlds would likely pay more attention to the things that get a lot of votes. And so if you really care about getting a certain thing changed, then please make your vote heard and make comments on things to sort of give your 2 cents, as they say. How do you think a certain thing would work? Because here we are in still the beta days. That's looking kind of cool. It's starting to. Here we are in the beta days of Horizon Worlds, still a beta, when what users experience, what they ask for, what they are commenting on could make a big difference in how it turns out in later versions. So that's good. Anyway, please subscribe to me, VJ Franz K, on YouTube. And I also have a Patreon. It's great to cover creative technology, creative tech in every way I can, but I know that virtual reality is going to be a big thing in the next few years. You will see, particularly, well, you'll definitely see once you have your VR headset. And the price is going to come down, the power is going to increase on them. So people will be increasingly motivated to, that's kind of interesting. Oh, punk rock, right? Got this wild punk rock hair now. It's green or orange. So much fun here. It's so much fun to build, kind of like a classic building set experience, except the thing is, with your classic building sets, eventually you run out of pieces. You've used up all of your things, and so the only things to do then are disassemble what you previously built to get more parts, or go out and buy more building sets to give you the pieces that you would need. But for kids, they don't necessarily have their own large amount of money to do that, so it may be hard to convince their parents to go in for more blocks. But when you're in a virtual space, there is no limit to how much you can. From the parent side, you can say, at least my kid will not be bugging me for more virtual blocks, because here they are unlimited. And in the famous building block things, you can't accidentally step on them and have them hurt your feet. Everyone who was a kid or has kids eventually experiences that unfortunate development of building sets. To step on one that you didn't see was there when you're not wearing shoes. Robot being built out of all of these crazy shapes. But yes, please subscribe. It is great discussing creative tech with you at all times. Please leave your comments and questions below the video. And don't forget to like. It takes only seconds to click like on a video or on a Horizon world like we are in. And yet it means a lot to the creators, because on a social media platform, or in this case, on social VR, those likes help the world and the creator get noticed on the site. So do your part for creators that you appreciate their work. One last thing to say about this torus quarter. Notice it's not exactly a quarter. It doesn't go clearly out to that box. And once again, it's going to have that unusual rotation, just because this is not the center. This should be the center. It should rotate around this point, so you get a nice rotation there. But anyway, my video screen has been hovering here the entire time while I was just rambling on and talking about this stuff. But another thing is, it's kind of difficult to control your camera while there are a bunch of things that are movable in the world, because you keep grabbing the wrong thing. So maybe to be able to specify the placement of, like, how close to an object you have to be before it asks if you want to pick it up. That could be useful. Got the triangle glasses. While looking at all these new shapes, how close do you want to have to be before? Notice when I put my hand forward, it shows this circle, which means I'm about to grab it, but I'm still fairly far away. It would be good to be able to set the distance. How close to this triangular wedge do I have to be before? See, if I reach out here, I don't get that. But I get a little bit closer to it, and then there it is. And you can grab it. That is handy. But suppose you don't want that for some reason in your world, like maybe you have a large amount of objects that you're having to hold and deal with at close up. I'm keeping my hand on this camera here, but it's got this sort of awkward selfie view. But anyway, triangles. Thank you for watching.